There's been a lot of talk recently inside the Beltway about the potential for a border adjustment tax. But to understand the real impact of such a tax, we have to go outside the Beltway. Joining us now to talk about it from Miami is Kathy Alvarez of Alpha International Seafood, and from Denver, Derek Figueroa of Seattle Fish Company. Thank you both for joining us. Kathy, let's start with you. Proponents of the tax say in a recent Wall Street Journal article that it's about bringing jobs back to the U.S. But could you discuss how this is just the opposite for your company?
Sure. We employ here at Alpha International about 100 people domestically in our Miami office. And those people sell, they do accounting, they do filleting, drivers, processing. So a majority of the work that we do on the fish is here domestically. And if this tax passed, some of those people could lose their jobs.
Derek, when people think of seafood, they often just think of the fishermen. But this tax would have an enormous and negative impact on the whole value chain. What kind of unintended consequences do you foresee happening?
Sure, I think it's a great question because ours is not an insular business. While we employ about 170 people in our warehouse in Colorado, it's really important to think about the impacts of this border adjustment tax on the entire supply chain. So that's upstream, that includes our fishermen, the longshoremen, the processing plants that handle the product, as well as downstream from logistic companies, and including our customers and ultimately the consumers that'll have, just really higher food costs as a result of this, as a result of this tax.
And Kathy, just as an example, your company imports a lot of mahi-mahi. Is this a situation, if this tax went through, where you could simply just replace that with U.S. mahi-mahi?
That's a really great question, Lindsay. There is no way for us to replace the mahi that we catch with domestic product. Fish is really the last hunted food in the world, and you have to fish it where it lives. In the case of mahi-mahi, the vast majority of the biomass is off the coast of either South America or Asia in the Southern Pacific. There is some mahi-mahi domestically, and we purchase that if we can, but the bulk of the fish is caught off of South America. So we import the fish from where it's caught, and then we sell and distribute throughout the U.S.
Seafood is unique in that the raw material is primarily imported, but not because we don't use domestic product. How does Seattle Fish use both domestic and imported seafood?
Yeah, very similar to Kathy. We love domestic product, and we'll source as much source and supply as much domestic product as is available. But recent sustainability measures and making sure that we're being responsible with our fishery, harvesting the maximum sustainable yield, it doesn't allow us to fulfill all of our needs with domestic product, and that's why imported product is such an important component of our business. And it's not that we don't try to maximize our ability to supply on domestic product. Just it's simply not available, and that's why imported product is such a valuable source for us for product that we need.
There's an idea that someone on the other side of the border will ultimately be paying for it, but that's really just not accurate. Could you guys discuss who does end up paying for this?
Sure. Ultimately, the U.S. consumer is going to end up paying for this tax. I know for our company, we import a lot of product from Panama and from Ecuador, which are both dollarized economies. So the idea that if the dollar strengthens, there's going to be cheaper imported prices just simply doesn't happen. In our case, the prices that we will have to charge to our customers will go up likely by 20 to 25%. And that ultimately means that Americans eating in restaurants, buying seafood in grocery stores are going to pay 25% more for seafood. The suppliers that we buy from are not going to drop prices to sell to the U.S. They'll just sell the product somewhere else.
Yeah, and similarly, that's one of the pieces that's most frustrating to us, is that this increases the cost of food to consumers ultimately. And food is one of our main tenets of survival. It really has these unintended consequences that make the cost of food to consumers increase. We know that we're trying to source as much domestic product as we can. We know then that we have to rely on imported seafood, and this measure, which just increases the cost of the seafood that we need to healthy and sustainably feed people, right, and our consumers to to have a situation where these unintended consequences increase the cost of food doesn't benefit, the consumer, doesn't benefit the industry, and ultimately it really doesn't benefit the United States.
I mean, Lindsay, the fisheries in the United States are incredibly well managed, and right now they're fished at sustainable levels. And the U.S. fisheries provide approximately 15% of the fish that U.S. consumers eat. The other 85% of the seafood that we eat here in the U.S. is caught or farmed somewhere else in the world and imported into the U.S. And there is simply no way to replace that much seafood with domestic product without overfishing all the fisheries in the U.S., which is not a result that any of us want to happen, certainly. So if the product is taxed at the border, the price will flow down to the consumer, who will pay 25% more for all the fish that they eat.
Really insightful. Thank you both for joining us.